Hello and welcome to Money Matters TV. My name is Michael Verrill and I'm the Vice President of Strategic Development with the Sharp Financial Group. We provide a unique process of integrated financial management to help entrepreneurs maximize business value, increase cash flow, reduce tax liability, and create and execute on a plan to transition their most valuable asset to long-term family wealth and future legacy. Thank you for joining us for our continuing discussion on growth stories, where we hear from entrepreneurs and advisors who share secrets and advice on what owners need to know to grow. From time to time, discussions involving technology, life sciences, or healthcare companies may be discussed on the show. Those discussions are not and should not be viewed as financial advice. Moreover, since the program is pre-recorded and shown at a later date, some of those discussions may no longer be relevant. Please seek advice from your financial advisor before entering into any financial transaction. I am joined today by my co-host, Rija Bears. Rija is the Vice President of CBRE, a global real estate consulting firm. Rija has spent more than 15 years providing research and consulting to corporate occupiers of space. She also serves on the technology and media practices in the Philadelphia office, where she provides high-growth companies with real estate strategies to support their business objectives. Rija also serves on the program and outreach committees for Tech Girls, an organization that helps expose middle school-aged girls to careers in technology. Rija, great. Thank you for joining us for Growth Stories.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here.
So everywhere you read now, you hear about the economic expansion.
Yes.
Being that you spend all your days in the real estate industry, I thought it'd be great to get some perspective on what you're seeing there, what kind of trends are coming about relating to that expansion. I mean,
Sure.
sometimes real estate is seen as a lagging indicator, so just curious to hear what you're seeing.
It is typically a lagging indicator, and this is such a long expansionary period. We're not used to seeing this. Rents continue to go up. Space is really leasing up, and the vacancy rate is low. We are seeing obsolete real estate really be redeveloped and create new experiences for tenants. The one thing that I will say is the large corporate users of real estate continue to feel the pain of the last downturn, and I think they are starting to become very conservative and keeping their eye on the markets to make sure that they're ahead of that curve this time around.
Interesting. Well, we have a question from one of our viewers,
Okay.
and this might just dovetail into that conversation, but
Sure.
Sam Nelson from Philadelphia would like to know, what are the trends in commercial rentals in Philadelphia? Any
Yep.
specific trends, types
Yeah.
of space, or
Most
rates?
definitely. I would say trends, generally speaking, are that people are chasing talent. Talent is a major buzzword right now. And to do that, they're creating offices with experiences.
Okay.
So the amenities we've heard of, wellness as well is a key factor, creating well spaces. And then the other thing is Internet of Things being integrated in a major way. So I think it's sort of akin to the green building materials that were 10 to 15 years ago coming into play. As the early adopters saw the value, that became a little bit commoditized. And now what we're seeing is early adopters on that Internet of Things, and I think we'll start to see that commoditized to where, because of the speed of technology, that's going to happen a lot quicker than the last trend. So
Right.
10 years from now, all of the offices will incorporate a lot of those wellness as well as
Gotcha.
Internet of Things.
So if you're a landlord with commercial office space to rent, you better make sure that technology is plugged in and integrated into that space if you're going to be competitive, because it sounds like that's where other landlords will be going.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah,
Your building
yeah.
cannot go down in this day and age.
Right. Yeah, interesting. It's always great to hear from our viewers. To submit for a future show, here's how to send your questions to Money Matters TV.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says Send Us Your Questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, M-O-N-E-Y, -matters, M-A-T-T-E-R-S, TV.com.
We have the second half of a bit of a cliffhanger for you today. The last time we left our last guest, he was going through a bit of an existential crisis. Another project late at night, away from home, wondering if the project actually really added some real significant good impact to the world, and what that really meant for him, why he was there, and what was next, what was next for him, and why. We are pleased to welcome our guest back today. Doug Claffey is the CEO with Energage, and we are, like I said, happy to have Doug join us. Rija and I are happy to have you here, Doug. We're looking forward to getting in and delving into the interview, but before we do that, I was hoping you could remind the viewers from last time what Energage does and the kind of customers that you focus on.
Great. So Energage is a culture technology company, and we help our customers unlock the potential and inspire performance in their talent, to Ria's point earlier. And so we provide applications and services to unlock that potential, which in most organizations there's a lot of potential that's trapped. In terms of the customers that we serve companies anywhere from 50 employees up to about 50,000 or so. And we do that partly through our Top Workplaces programs that we run all across the country.
That's great. And Doug, congratulations are in order. So you've recently, I guess it was just last week, were the recipient of the Cradle of Liberty chapter of the Boy Scouts of America, the Good Scout Technology Award. Tell us a little bit about that award and what it means to you.
So it was a great honor for me. The Cradle of Liberty Council provides this honor every year to a technology leader who demonstrates essentially the way that Scouts live and their values. And so in my case, I was active in Scouting as an adult leader, and I have two sons who are both now Eagle Scouts, and so I was active through that process. So Scouting meant a lot to me, both in terms of the program itself and what it did for my sons and for the boys in our troop. I really learned what a great program it is. The Cradle of Liberty Council runs this as a benefit to provide Scouting to kids who are underserved who otherwise wouldn't get that benefit.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's really great. Well, congratulations again.
Thanks very much.
Congratulations, Doug. That's great. And 2 Eagle Scouts. That's impressive. It's good parenting.
Super proud.
Absolutely. That's great. That's great. Well, as we mentioned in the intro, you have this great job. You're working for a global consulting firm, but you're starting to wonder why. Is there more out there? It's a grind, right? The consulting world, as great as it can be and the phenomenal work those companies do, it can be a bit of a grind. And you're starting to come to a crossroads and wonder why. I was wondering if you could take us back to that moment and kind of talk to us a little bit about what was going through your head. What's kind of this decision matrix you were experiencing at that time?
Sure. So taking this back when this was happening, I was working for McKinsey & Company. I lived in Dublin. I had 3 young children. And at this particular engagement, I was working in Germany. And the week would be you leave on Sunday night, and if you're lucky, you get home Thursday night. If you're unlucky, you get home Friday morning. So you're away from your family, working pretty much the whole time that you're gone. And we were helping a giant chemical company raise the price of one of their chemicals, or help by just a few cents per metric something. And looking at the market and looking how the dynamics were. And I just thought, if I get hit by a bus, what difference will I have made in the world? And so that was really the kind of existential crisis for me. Now, what I decided at that point is I was going to go do something different. And so that was the sort of decision point. Now, exactly what I was going to do right then, I wasn't certain. But I knew it was going to be about making the world a better place to work together, because that was my real passion at McKinsey and prior. Was all about teams and companies figuring out why some work well together and why some don't.
Interesting.
And we all hit that place in our careers where we say to ourselves, why am I doing this, and how can I really make an impact? So you hit that point. Tell us about the process by which you sort of untangled yourself from that wonderful experience that you had, but made your way into the next. What was next for you, and how did you go through that?
So the next step was to really go back to more of a startup mentality. So I had been at employee number 7 at a aerospace company. And prior to that, I had been employee number 400,011 at GE or something like that. And so I knew that I wanted to go back to a startup. And this time I wanted to found it myself. And so that was, kind of knew that was what was coming. So in doing some research into how we could get to market, worked with a British company that did a program called the Best Places to Work with the Sunday Times, and helped them to do some optimization of their business, get them to be more profitable. And the business model was really good, so we then decided to take that business model in the United States and start a company around that. So that was the kind of the flow.
Okay, great.
So initially was an opportunity, consulting opportunity basically, right, for kind of a turnaround situation?
Yeah, that company had started out with some government funding, and it needed to, it was running out, and so it needed to start to become profitable on an operating basis, and so we were able to go in and help them to do that.
Right. So what were some of the key factors you looked at to say, here's this business, you helped to turn it around, it has some commercial viability, but initial funding was government-based. How do you look at the U.S. market and go, of course, this will definitely work here? Like, how do you make that transition? Or did you just say, you know,
well,
we
we looked
go
at the
for it?
U.S. market. We realized that there were just 2 other folks on our space. One was with Fortune, and one was with the Business Journal, and nobody was working with the newspapers, the primary distributors of news within metro areas. And so when we looked at that opportunity, somewhat naively, we said, here's an opportunity to do this. We didn't realize it's actually quite difficult to break into those newspapers. So we came over and sort of, you know, put in a lot of elbow grease to get our first customer, and then after that, the dominoes started, our first partner, and then after that, it started to get a little bit easier. So.
What were some of the factors like that made the newspaper understand that, hey, this is a good partnership? Like, how did you get through the first one? And
So
then
this was back in 2006 and 2007. So it was actually right before the Great Recession.
Okay.
And so in the initial case, the newspaper had a judges panel version of a Top Workplaces program that really was timed to reinvent itself. Problem with the judges panel is that whoever doesn't win the program feels that maybe that had something to do with the judges as opposed to them.
sort of bias,
And
right?
so that was kind of perfect timing for that one partner, the News Journal in Delaware. And then once we had that one on board and showed that it was actually very great, produced great information for readers, and was also something that was a profitable endeavor for the newspaper, we were able to then take that and took that to the Boston Globe. And then once we had the Boston Globe on, it was really a lot easier now that we had the proof points.
That's great. And
Great.
that takes a good bit of confidence to make that leap. Were there any experiences from your past that you really weighed on to build that confidence to decide?
Yeah, I think that the time I spent at Analytical Graphics, which was I was the 7th person there, really had a lot to do with that. So I had seen that company grow and been part of the leadership team for growing that company. And that experience gave me confidence that I could see what growth would look like for that 7-person to 100-person, 150-person kind of level. And so if I'd not been through that, I don't know if I would have started the company up from there.
So you relied on that kind of past experience and saying, hey, I was part of the 7 people, we made that thing work.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I be able to do this if I had the foresight and
Take those lessons
hard work
and apply them.
Yeah, it's great. Any fits and starts? I mean, you know, you get obviously getting that first newspaper to sign up in Delaware, that was huge.
Yeah.
Did it just get easy from there, or was
No.
it still? Yeah.
Not at all.
Talk about
So
that.
we were trying to figure out the model. So initially, I was driving down to Delaware and going from company to company to share the results. Our technology was, we focused all of our technology on the survey and the results experience. So the actual administration of the survey, the whole process was done very manually. And so we realized that we weren't able to scale the business that way in any kind of efficient way. So we're going to have to look at technology, look at business process. We moved a lot of the process from face-to-face to over the phone and through WebEx, and so that was all different, trying different things to see what would work for the customer, but what also made sense from a scalability perspective.
Interesting. Okay.
And you were starting to gain traction, assuming hit some roadblocks during those sort of process kind of solution solving times. But then as you start to get some legs with top workplaces, how did you then really build out and gain the traction that you've hit today?
So the first phase was really about adding more and more metro areas around the country. So we're now up to 50, and we're in most of the major metro areas in the country. Cover most of the country right now, and so a lot of the early focus was adding new business partners.
Okay.
Once we had gotten to the point where most markets were partners, then we started to focus more of our efforts on the technology sides of things. So that was a kind of sequence. It was first about scale, and then about really focusing in on the products and solutions.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. Go ahead.
This all software you built internally, customize this specifically for the top workplaces needs to fill what you were looking to accomplish with the companies?
Yep. So this is the about the third generation of the survey and results software. So we built one initially using an outside contractor, and then brought development in-house, and then rebuilt it, and then scaled up our development team, and then rebuilt it on again. And so it's kind of a third generation. And so in addition to the survey and connect products, we also bought a company called Energage that had a product called process called catalytic coaching, and so then we integrated that product into the suite.
Okay. So was that a need that you saw that came out of kind of some of the results of these surveys? Because you've got now insight into what you're interviewing these companies, taking them through a survey to see if they're a top place to work, but then you're also getting all of the information on what aren't top places to work.
Exactly.
And improvements they could make, right? So how much of your time was spent actually looking at the data that wouldn't be published in the...
Well, we certainly looked at a lot of that data, and then we also did a lot of statistical analysis of the data, so looked at correlations to see what drivers of culture, engagement, employee experience actually move the needle in terms of those engagement outcomes. And so we tested hundreds and hundreds of different statements to try to figure out what would move the needle the most. And those came down to 15 drivers that fit into 4 imperatives for the culture. The 4 imperatives are align, connect, coach, and perform. So if you can align your culture, if you can have employees feel connected, if you can instill a coaching mindset, and then perform, then that's the kind of pinnacle of being a top workplace. And so to your question around the Energage acquisition and catalytic coaching, that third element is around coaching mindset. So employees want to feel that managers understand their concerns, help them to learn and grow, and that the organization helps them to live up to their full potential. And so those 3 are really important to employees, more important than many other things we've measured. And so more important than pay, more important than benefits, more important than training, more important than work-life balance. And so we looked for a solution out there that would address that, and catalytic coaching was an existing process, been around for a number of years, and so rather than try to start from scratch, we went out and merged with the catalytic coaching folks.
It's buy it instead of build it, right?
Yeah, well, buy, and then there's more building that has to happen.
Yeah.
Buy, integrate.
Buy, integrate, upgrade. Right.
So were you doing this with your own capital? Capital was generating the profitability of the company. Did you have some investment partners early on? Talk to us about how you financed a lot of this growth.
So we were bootstrapped for the first 7 years of the company, from 2006 to 2013.
Wow.
And so we really lived off of initially the founding partners not taking a salary, and took them every cent, we put it back into the company, and then hired an employee and made enough money to hire another employee, and really ran that bootstrap time. Now, that was 2006 through the Great Recession and the jobless recovery, which a lot of people is kind of pretty
Yeah.
far in the rearview mirror
Gets
right
lost
now.
in the
Right.
But a lot of companies and even some newspapers had this attitude that you ought to feel lucky if you have a job. They weren't talking at that time so much about employee engagement, employee experience, and culture.
Yeah.
And so that was really the topic.
right.
And so
Novel.
Bootstrap really made sense at that time.
Mm-hmm.
As things started to heat up and we started to see more investment coming to HR tech, we had a great little business, but it was still a little business, and we were seeing other folks raising money and starting to scale. So in 2013, we brought in some angels and a small investment from a local venture capital firm,
Okay.
Rittenhouse, and then and so that kind of took us through that next phase of growth. And Rittenhouse is a great partner, by the way, just to tell all our listeners out there for venture capital. I'd strongly recommend them. And then after that, we as we were growing, to really accelerate our growth, we needed to kind of go up another level in terms of outside capital. And so we brought in a group called New Spring, who are local here to Philly, and another just fantastic group of folks that private equity.
That's great. And I do want to talk about the rebranding that you've gone under.
Sure.
But first, do you have any advice on bringing in capital for our viewers? Just from the relationship standpoint of having those relationships before you're actually seeking capital, or what you would or would not do in the future.
Yeah. So I think you need to look at the external factors as well as the internal ones. When we were initially starting the company and we were going through the Great Recession, it wasn't a great time to raise capital, period. And at that point, we were essentially proving the concept. And as you're proving the concept, capital is a lot more expensive. Once you prove the concept, capital gets cheaper. And so we were actually to raise mezzanine debt, which is a of higher interest than you get from a bank debt, but lower cost than stock or equity. And because the company was throwing off cash, and we were able to get some growth capital through mezzanine debt. And then after that, we went, as we were growing more aggressively, we brought in the venture capital, private equity. I would say the most important thing is to go out and seek advice from as the smartest person you can find around.
Yeah.
And so that was really, as somebody whose background was engineering and then in management consulting, I didn't have that background.
Okay.
And by and large, can't read in a book or see it on a YouTube video. And you really want to seek out people who are smart in this topic area and that can mentor you on it. So
That's great. That's great. And I touched on it before, but just from a rebranding standpoint, can you lead us through what drove that rebranding from
Sure.
Workplace Dynamics to Energage?
So when we started the company, we were very much focused on research. And so Workplace Dynamics was a great name for a research company. It's a little stodgy, a little boring, but it sounds very researchy. And so as we shifted from being a research company to being a software company, it really didn't fit us anymore. And so some of the problems we had with it is if somebody asked you where you worked out at a bar and you said Workplace Dynamics, by the time you got to the last syllable, they'd start to kind of doze off. And then the other one that was just torture was occasionally you'd have to spell it on the phone, and you'd have to spell it WORKPL, et cetera. And so those were some of the pains that our employees were feeling. It was
Right.
just not feeling excited about the company they worked for from a branding
Right,
perspective.
right. Which is
And
all what you're about, right? So
The
exactly,
irony.
and
think about
then
it
we found
intentionally.
from a that's right, and then from a customer perspective, we would almost inevitably introduced as workforce dynamics or work day or
Right,
just workplace, or people couldn't really remember the name. It didn't have great sticking power.
right.
So we have a marketing firm that we work with, and we talked to them about the potential of using Energage because I'd always liked the name. And they said, that's a great name. They said a branding study could cost you $500,000 in 6 months or a year, and you might not come up with a name better than that. And if you already have the name, the trademark, and the URL and domain, off you go. And so I learned that it's synthetic. That's not a real word. It's active, so it's got an active component to it. It's a contraction of Energize and Engage.
Right.
So,
When you hear it and see it, it makes sense for what
it's
you're
an
doing.
exciting name.
right?
So yeah, I work for
How long-
Energage. So
And
how
the
long-
logo, I
yeah.
like the logo as well. Like
yeah,
almost
if you
a
look closely
spring.
at the logo, it looks like a spring
It
releasing
does.
energy
Yeah,
and potential. You'll also see, if you kind of tilt your head sideways, you'll actually see the word "we" in cursive. So, little known fact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of like the FedEx.
Exactly.
Right, the
Little
air FedEx.
clandestine.
Our designers were going through it, and they pointed out, we're like, "That's it."
That's the one. That's
Yeah.
the one we
Great.
want.
We,
That's
yeah.
the one we want. Cool. That's very cool.
Fantastic.
How has it been with institutional money in the company? Has it changed things? Has it energized you more? Has it opened
Yeah.
up opportunities for you?
It really has opened up opportunities. I would say on the hiring front, when you're hiring top talent, it really says that somebody's standing behind you. And so as a smaller company, when you're out trying to get that very top talent, having a reputable private equity backer makes a big difference.
Yeah.
From accessing the wisdom of the private equity company and their portfolio, that's been fantastic. So we work with Mike DiPiano there at NewSpring, and just one of the smartest business guys I know. And he has the benefit of having not only been an operator and a CEO himself, but also now having worked with many, many, many companies, seen many different kind of patterns and trends, and he's able to, help get out ahead of before you start to maybe bump into a bump in the road. So.
Right. It's help you try to avoid that, learn lessons from somebody else who bumped their toe.
Exactly.
Very hot space right now, right? HR technology. Can you talk about some of the trends and where you see that market going, and kind of where maybe Energage is positioned in that?
So HR tech as an investment area for venture capital and private equity is the hottest space right now. For a while it was fintech and ad tech, and now HR tech is where a lot of the money is going. So it's the inflows are just enormous. Then what's happened recently is we actually started to see some merger and acquisition activity, and recently Glint was acquired by LinkedIn, which was a like $500 million acquisition, and the more recent one, which just happened this past weekend, was the announcement by SAP that they were acquiring Qualtrics for $8 billion and something north of a 20x multiple on revenue. So these are, each year for the last 3 or 4 years, the private equity speakers would get up and say, "This is the hottest market ever." Well, it's still the
20x
hottest
on
market ever.
revenue sounds
Yeah.
pretty hot to
Yeah,
me,
exactly.
right?
That's exactly
doesn't
right.
get much hotter than that.
No, and
That's
when you look
incredible.
behind the why, the market is coming to the conclusion that one of the last sources of competitive advantage is your talent, your people, and so they are. We've kind of squoze out the productivity out of ERP and CRM and the email and the sort of tools like that. And now what the market has really realized is the companies who have performed the best are the ones with the best culture. The best culture wins.
Right,
And so then the question becomes, how do I get the best culture? And that's where HR technology and specifically culture technology, the area we're in, really comes in.
Employ Energage, right?
Energage, exactly.
Well,
Energage your people.
Yeah, exactly. This has been great, Doug. Thank you for joining us again to finish out the story. We'll look forward to hearing more of your successes, and then we'll keep in touch.
Well, Michael, real pleasure, and we have real pleasure. Just really enjoyed this tremendously. So
Yeah,
thanks so much.
Great. Thank you, Rija and Doug, for joining me. The guest on the next Money Matters TV show will be Jim Schulman of Elsenair Business Associates. As a reminder, you can download the podcast from iTunes and Stitcher, as well as see us on our YouTube channel at Money Matters TV. Thank you for joining us for Growth Stories.